Part 3. Korean Mafia boss hired a black female bodyguard. She took down 50-plus assassins in one night. Blood streamed from a gash above Sarah's eye as she slammed a fresh magazine into her weapon. The corridor ahead was littered with bodies, men who'd made the fatal mistake of standing between her and her husband. Marcus knelt beside her, pressing a hand against the bullet wound in his shoulder. 27 down, Sarah whispered, wiping blood from her face. But Jin's bringing in reinforcements. I count at least 30 more converging on our position. Marcus looked at her, his eyes reflecting the emergency lights flashing throughout the compound. We're trapped. Your father-in-law is being held 3 floors up. Federal agents have the building surrounded. Jin has us exactly where he wants us. Sarah reached out, touching his face with bloodied fingers. Remember the night we met? When you walked up to my table and scared Derek away. Everyone thought I needed saving. She smiled, the expression fierce and beautiful against her battle-worn face. They never understood. I wasn't the one who needed protection. Sarah, I didn't become your bodyguard because I needed a job, Marcus. She checked her weapons methodically. I took the position because I recognized something in you. Something worth protecting. Worth killing for. Gunfire erupted at the end of the hallway. Sarah rose in one fluid motion, her body positioning itself between Marcus and the approaching threat. Stay behind me, she commanded, her voice suddenly cold, professional. And remember what I promised you the day we married. That no force on earth could separate us, Marcus said, readying his own weapon despite his injury. Sarah chambered around, her smile turning predatory. I meant it then and I mean it now. Jin should have brought more men. 2 hours earlier, Sarah and Marcus moved deeper into Jin's compound, navigating the utility corridor with practiced stealth. The walls here were concrete, pipes running along the ceiling, clearly a maintenance level rarely used by the compound's regular occupants. Perfect for their approach. Security center should be 1 level up, Sarah whispered, consulting the mental map she'd memorized during her preparations. Medical suite is on the 3rd floor, east wing. Marcus nodded, checking his watch. 5 minutes until the evidence releases. We need to reach father before everything explodes. They found a service stairwell, free of cameras, another oversight in Jin's security that Sarah had identified months ago during her contingency planning. Old buildings, no matter how renovated, always retained blind spots if you knew where to look. As they ascended, Sarah's earpiece picked up increased chatter on Jin's security frequencies. They're mobilizing, she informed Marcus quietly. Something's happening. Vincent must have triggered the evidence release early. They reached the door to the main floor, pausing to listen for movement beyond. Sarah detected nothing, but caution had kept them alive this long. She slipped a fiber optic camera beneath the door, checking the corridor beyond. Clear for now, but there's increased activity further down the hallway. Guards moving with purpose. We stick to the plan, Marcus decided. Direct route to the medical suite. Sarah opened the door slowly, weapon ready. The corridor beyond was elegantly appointed, rich carpeting, subtle lighting, expensive artwork, a stark contrast to the utilitarian passages they'd navigated below. This was the private residence section of Jin's compound, reserved for family and honored guests, or prisoners of particular value. They moved silently, Sarah leading with Marcus covering their rear. The increased activity they detected seemed concentrated elsewhere in the compound, leaving this section mysteriously understaffed. It's too easy, Sarah murmured, her instincts screaming warnings. Where is everyone? As if in answer to her question, a distant alarm began to sound. Not the blaring security alarm they'd expected, but something more subtle, a pulsing tone that suggested a different kind of emergency. Evacuation protocol, Marcus realized. Jin's clearing the compound. Why would he? Sarah began, then understanding dawned. The evidence. If Vincent released it early, Jin knows he's exposed. He's consolidating, pulling back to a defensive position. Marcus's expression hardened. With my father as leverage. They quickened their pace, no longer prioritizing stealth over speed. If Jin was evacuating, their window to reach Antonio Castiano was closing rapidly. The medical suite's location was marked by a subtle change in the corridor's design, wider hallways, reinforced doors, and finally, their first encounter with Jin's interior security team. 2 guards stood outside a set of double doors, alert and professionally positioned. Sarah assessed the situation in seconds. No clean approach, direct confrontation or retreat. "We don't have time for retreat," Marcus replied. They moved simultaneously, years of working together creating a seamless coordination. Sarah targeted the guard on the left, Marcus the right. Their shots were perfectly synchronized, dropping both men before either could raise an alarm. Sarah was moving before the bodies hit the floor, reaching the doors with Marcus right behind her. The medical suite beyond was state-of-the-art equipment that would rival any high-end hospital, all centered around a single hospital bed where Antonio Castiano lay. The elder Castiano appeared unconscious, connected to monitoring equipment and in 4. Standing beside him was not Jean, as they'd expected, but Leo, Marcus's trusted lieutenant. "Boss," Leo's relief was evident. "Thank God. We need to move him now." Jin's ordered a full evacuation. "He's taking your father to a secondary location." Marcus moved to his father's bedside, checking his condition while Sarah secured the room, ensuring no surveillance was active. "How is he?" she asked, noting the elder Castiano's pallor. "Sedated but stable," Leo reported. "They've been keeping him under, but the Dr. Jean assigned says there's no permanent damage. He should recover once the drugs clear his system." "Can we move him?" Marcus asked, his hand resting on his father's arm. "I've already disconnected the non-essential monitoring." The doctor prepared a portable kit. Leo gestured to a medical bag nearby. "But we need to hurry. Jin's personal security team is on the way to transport him." Sarah had been scanning frequencies on her communications unit. "Confirmed. They're 5 minutes out, coming with a medical transport team." Marcus made the decision immediately. "We move him now, back the way we came." "No," Leo shook his head. "The tunnels have been discovered. Jin's people are sweeping them as we speak. We need another route." Sarah moved to the room's large windows, checking sight lines and angles. The east gardens are minimally guarded. Evacuation protocols have pulled most personnel to the main house. "If we can reach the perimeter wall." She stopped abruptly, her body tensing. Outside, vehicle lights appeared, multiple SUVs approaching rapidly. "That's not Jin's medical team," she said quietly. "Too many vehicles. Wrong approach vector." Leo moved to her side, looking out. "Federal agents. They're moving on the compound." The evidence release, Marcus realized. It started. Their window had just closed dramatically. Jin's compound was now caught between 2 forces, Jin's own security teams conducting an evacuation, and federal agents responding to the evidence of corruption Vincent and Jessica had released. Marcus turned to his father, making a rapid assessment. "We need to wake him. We can't carry him out through an active federal raid." Leo produced a syringe from the medical bag. Counteragent to the sedative. The doctor prepared it in case rapid evacuation became necessary. "Do it," Marcus ordered. As Leo administered the medication, Sarah continued monitoring both the federal approach and Jin's internal communications. "Jin's security is aware of the federal presence," she reported. "They're establishing defensive positions. This is about to become a battleground." Antonio Castiano's eyes fluttered, then opened, confusion giving way to recognition as he saw his son. "Marcus." His voice was rough from disuse. "What's happening?" "Jean betrayed us. All of us," Marcus explained succinctly. "He's been working with federal authorities, setting up the 5 families for a coordinated takedown." The elder Castiano processed this information with remarkable speed despite his drugged state. "Where is he now?" "Command center, most likely," Leo answered. "Coordinating the evacuation." Antonio struggled to sit up, Marcus supporting him. "Help me stand. We end this tonight." "Father, you're in no condition. I've been unconscious, not dead." Antonio cut him off. "And no one uses me as bait against my son without consequences." Sarah had to admire the old man's spirit. Even weakened, Antonio Castiano carried himself with the authority that had made him one of the most respected and feared leaders in the Five Family's history. "If we're moving, it needs to be now," she said, urgency in her tone. "Federal agents are establishing a perimeter. Jin's forces are concentrating on the main building. Our window is narrow and closing." Antonio looked at her, really seeing her for the first time. Marcus's wife. The bodyguard. "Yes, sir." A smile touched the old man's lips. "My son chose well. Save the family reunion," Leo interrupted. "We have company." Footsteps approached from the corridor, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Sarah positioned herself near the door, weapon ready. Marcus helped his father to a standing position while Leo gathered essential medical supplies. 5, maybe 6, Sarah assessed, listening to the approaching threat. Armed, professional movement patterns. Jin's personal security, Leo confirmed. Elite team. Sarah glanced at Marcus, communicating silently as they had countless times before. He nodded, understanding her plan without words. When the door burst open, Sarah was already in motion. The first man through received a precision shot to the shoulder of his gun arm, incapacitating without killing. The second faced a similar fate. Sarah was creating chaos, disrupting their entry formation without immediately escalating to lethal force. Marcus utilized the confusion, targeting the third and fourth men with similar precision. Leo secured Antonio, moving him toward the room's secondary exit, a door that led to an adjoining consultation space. The fifth security operative recognized the ambush and pulled back, shouting into his radio. "Medical suite compromised. Targets active and armed." Alarms blared throughout the compound, not the subtle evacuation tone from before, but full security alert. Their presence was now known to everyone in the compound. "Move," Sarah ordered, covering their retreat through the consultation room. "We need a new exit strategy." Leo led them through a series of connecting rooms, clearly familiar with the layout. Service elevator at the end of this hallway. Connects to the garage level. "If we can reach a vehicle." "Federal agents have the vehicle exits covered," Sarah reminded him, checking corners as they progressed. "And Jin's security will be converging on this position." "We don't need to escape the compound," Marcus said, supporting his father who was moving remarkably well despite his condition. "We just need to reach Jin." Sarah understood immediately. This wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about confrontation, resolution. Jin had attacked the Castiano family, attempted to destroy everything Marcus had built. In their world, such actions demanded a direct response. They reached the service elevator, Leo working the controls to summon it. Sarah established a defensive position, covering the hallway they just traversed. "Jin will be in the command center," Leo informed them. "Central building, top floor. Maximum security, limited access points." "How many guards?" Marcus asked. "Under normal circumstances, at least 20. With the federal presence and evacuation protocols, possibly double that." Sarah met Marcus's eyes. Difficult approach, but not impossible. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. As the doors opened, Sarah detected movement at the far end of the hallway, security personnel establishing positions, preparing to advance. "Company," she warned, firing several rounds to force them into cover. "And more coming." They entered the elevator, Leo selecting the garage level. As the doors closed, bullets impacted the metal, too late to prevent their descent, but a clear indication of the reception waiting below. "They'll have the garage level secured before we arrive," Sarah assessed. "And they know our destination." "Good," Marcus replied, his expression cold. "I want Jin to know we're coming." Antonio Castiano stood straighter, strength returning as the sedatives continued to clear his system. "My son, always direct. Some things never change." "Some things shouldn't," Marcus replied. The elevator's descent seemed agonizingly slow. Sarah used the time to check her remaining ammunition, redistribute magazines, and prepare for what awaited them. 9 rounds in her primary weapon. 2 full magazines in reserve. Backup weapon fully loaded. Combat knife. Limited options against what would likely be overwhelming numbers. "Leo," she said quietly, When those doors open, we'll need immediate cover. What's the layout? Service elevator opens to the maintenance bay. Concrete pillars to the right, vehicle lifts to the left. Main garage area beyond that. Limited visibility from the main security positions. Sarah nodded, formulating a plan. Marcus, you and your father stay behind Leo and me. We clear a path to the nearest vehicle, then proceed to the command center. The elevator slowed, approaching the garage level. Everyone tensed, weapons ready. Sarah took position directly in front of the doors, prepared to meet whatever waited beyond. The doors opened to darkness. The garage lights had been extinguished, a tactical decision by Jin's security to disadvantage them. Sarah switched smoothly to her training, relying on other senses where vision failed. She detected movement immediately, shapes in the darkness, positioned behind vehicles and concrete structures. At least 8 security personnel, possibly more. Stay close, she whispered, then moved into the darkness. The first shots came from her right, muzzle flashes briefly illuminating the space. Sarah fired back, precise despite the near-total darkness, using the flashes to target her response. 2 down. Leo moved left, creating crossfire that divided the security team's attention. Marcus and Antonio remained in the relative protection of the elevator, Marcus providing covering fire when possible. Sarah advanced methodically, using concrete pillars for cover as she eliminated threats with surgical precision. Her mind maintained a constant count, ammunition expended, threats neutralized, distance to objective. The professional detachment that had made her exceptional in special forces now guided every movement, every decision. The garage lights suddenly blazed on, Jin's security changing tactics, trying to blind them with the sudden illumination. Sarah had anticipated this, closing her eyes a split second before the lights came on, preserving her night vision. The advantage was brief but decisive. In the moment when Jin's men were adjusting to their own tactical decision, Sarah eliminated 3 more. Leo took down another 2. Vehicle. Sarah indicated a black SUV 30 yards ahead. Keys will be in the security office to the right. Leo nodded, shifting his position to approach the office while Sarah maintained suppressive fire. Marcus and Antonio followed, moving from cover to cover as Sarah directed. The security office was a small glass-walled space with clear visibility of the garage, currently occupied by a single security officer who was frantically calling for reinforcements. Leo neutralized him with a single shot through the glass, then retrieved the vehicle keys from a wall-mounted lockbox. Got them, he confirmed, rejoining the group. They were halfway to the SUV when the main garage doors opened. Tactical units poured in, not Jin's regular security, but something else. Their equipment, their movement patterns all spoke of specialized training. Federal, Sarah identified immediately. Jin's corrupt team, not the regular agents. This changed everything. These weren't hired guns or family security. These were trained federal agents operating under Jin's influence. Lethal force against them would have implications beyond the usual family conflicts. We need another approach, Marcus decided instantly. Sarah spotted an alternative, a service door marked maintenance access, near their position. There, she directed, already moving to provide cover for the others. They reached the door just as the federal tactical team established firing positions. Bullets impacted around them as Leo worked the electronic lock, eventually forcing it open with a security override card taken from the office. The maintenance access led to a narrow corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits. They moved quickly, putting distance between themselves and their pursuers. This should connect to the central building's lower levels, Leo said, leading them through the labyrinthine passages. Sarah checked her weapon, 7 rounds remaining in her current magazine, 2 full magazines in reserve. The engagement in the garage had been costly in ammunition if efficient in results. How's your shoulder? She asked Marcus, noting the blood seeping through his suit jacket. Functional, he replied tersely, his way of acknowledging the injury without admitting weakness. Antonio was moving better with each passing minute, the drug's effects continuing to dissipate. Jean will be monitoring everything, security cameras, communications, personnel movements. He knows exactly where we are. Let him know, Marcus said. I want him watching when we reach him. The maintenance corridor eventually opened into a larger utility room filled with electrical panels and climate control equipment. Beyond that, a stairwell led upward toward the central building and, ultimately, the command center where Jean waited. Sarah checked the stairwell, finding it clear but almost certainly monitored. Direct approach from here will be heavily defended. Every floor, every access point. Alternatives? Marcus asked. Sarah considered their options, mentally reviewing the compound's layout. External approach. Maintenance access to the roof, then down to the command center level. Leo nodded. Possible, but exposed during the roof crossing. Less defended than the interior routes, Sarah countered. Jean will concentrate forces inside, assuming we'll take the most direct path. A decision made, they continued through the utility areas until reaching an external access door that opened onto a narrow maintenance walkway. The night air was cool against Sarah's skin as they emerged onto the walkway, which hugged the building's exterior wall. Above them, the central building rose another 4 floors, the command center occupying the top level. The walkway connected to a service ladder that led to the roof. Exposed, vulnerable, but potentially less guarded than interior approaches. I'll go first, Sarah said, already moving toward the ladder. Secure the roof before you follow. She ascended quickly, every sense alert for. The roof appeared unguarded when she reached it, a tactical oversight she hadn't expected from Jin's otherwise thorough security preparations. Then she understood why. The helicopter pad at the center of the roof was active lights illuminating the space as a sleek black helicopter's rotors began to turn. Jean was preparing his escape. Sarah signaled to the others to wait, then moved closer to assess the situation. Through the helicopter's windows, she could see pilots conducting pre-flight checks. Near the helipad, guards maintained a perimeter, eyes focused outward, expecting threats from the building's interior access points rather than the maintenance ladder she'd used. She returned to the ladder, informing the others of what she'd found. Jin's evacuating. Helicopter preparing for departure. Guards visible, likely more inside the access structure. How long until they're airborne? Marcus asked. 5 minutes, maybe less. Marcus made an immediate decision. We split up. Sarah, you secure the helicopter. Prevent takeoff at all costs. Leo, take my father through the roof access point. Find a defensible position. I'll confront Jean directly. Marcus, Sarah began to object. This is between Jean and me now, he said firmly. This was always going to end with us face to face. Sarah wanted to argue, to insist on protecting him as she always had. But she recognized the look in his eyes, the same determination she'd seen the night they met, when he'd walked up to her table and changed her life forever. Be careful, she said instead, touching his face briefly. Always, he promised. They separated, each moving toward their assigned objectives. Sarah circled the roof's perimeter, approaching the helicopter from the blind side, while Marcus positioned himself for direct entry into the roof access structure. Leo and Antonio found cover behind ventilation equipment, establishing a supportive position with clear lines of sight. As Sarah neared the helicopter, she intercepted a transmission on the security frequency. Package is en route to extraction point. Departure in 3 minutes. Jean was coming. The final confrontation was imminent. Sarah reached the edge of the helipad, assessing the 4 guards. Still focused outward, still unaware of her approach. She needed to neutralize them quickly, silently if possible, before Jean arrived. The first guard fell without a sound. A precise strike that rendered him unconscious before he hit the ground. The second noticed something amiss, turning just as Sarah reached him. His attempt to raise his weapon was cut short by her practiced countermove, his body joining his colleagues on the rooftop. The remaining 2 guards spotted her then, their shouts of alarm lost beneath the helicopter's engine noise. They fired simultaneously, forcing Sarah into evasive movement. She rolled behind a fuel container, bullets impacting the metal mere inches from her position. In the distance, she saw Marcus enter the roof access structure, disappearing inside just as alarms began to sound throughout the compound. The confrontation with Jean was now inevitable. Sarah emerged from cover, firing with precision. 1 guard down, the last still maintaining his position near the helicopter's entry point. She needed to clear him quickly, The pilots had noticed the commotion and were accelerating their preparations for takeoff. A burst of gunfire from Leo's position eliminated the final guard. Sarah nodded her thanks, then sprinted toward the helicopter. The pilots saw her coming, panic evident in their expressions as they initiated liftoff procedures. Too late. Sarah reached the cockpit, weapon leveled at the pilot's head through the plexiglass. "Shut it down," she ordered, her voice carrying even over the rotor noise. Now, inside the roof access structure, Marcus moved carefully through darkened corridors. Unlike the opulent main floors of the compound, this area was utilitarian, designed for functionality rather than impression. Security would be concentrated around Gene himself rather than these service areas. He heard them before he saw them, a group approaching from the stairwell ahead. Jin's voice among them, issuing rapid orders to his security detail. "The helicopter is our only option now. Federal teams have all ground exits covered. Secure the route, eliminate any resistance." Marcus positioned himself at a junction where the corridor widened slightly, offering both cover and a clear line of sight to the approaching group. His shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed him earlier, but adrenaline dulled the pain to a manageable distraction. Gene appeared at the corridor's end, surrounded by 6 security personnel, his elite team, moving with the coordination of men who had trained together extensively. Gene himself appeared immaculate despite the chaos engulfing his compound, his suit perfectly tailored, his expression one of controlled urgency rather than panic. Marcus stepped into the open, weapon raised. "Gene!" The security team reacted instantly, weapons trained on Marcus, bodies positioning to shield Gene. But Gene himself raised a hand, halting their advance. "Marcus Castiano," he said, his voice carrying the slight accent that betrayed his Korean heritage. "Always the direct approach. I've always admired that about you, even while recognizing it as a weakness." "It's over, Gene," Marcus replied evenly. "The evidence has been released to all 5 families. Your federal connections are exposed. There's nowhere left to run." Gene smiled slightly. "You think a simple data leak ends this? I've spent years building my position, cultivating relationships with authorities at every level. Do you really believe I didn't prepare for contingencies? I believe you underestimated my family's resilience, my wife's capabilities, my brother's loyalty." "Ah yes, Vincent." The prodigal brother returned. Jin's smile widened. "Did he tell you about our conversations over the years? His frustration with your leadership? His ambition?" Marcus didn't allow the suggestion to distract him. "Whatever you're implying, it won't work." Vincent made his choice. "He stands with family." "Family?" Gene repeated, almost wistful. "Such an outdated concept in our world, Marcus. The future belongs to those who understand that loyalty to blood is a limitation, not a strength." As they spoke, Marcus was acutely aware of the security team's positioning, their readiness. 6 against 1 in a confined space. Not favorable odds even for someone with his training. "Your father," Gene continued, "a man I've respected for decades, failed to see the changing landscape. You, with your attempts to legitimize operations, to build a life with your bodyguard wife, charming, but ultimately doomed. Our world doesn't accommodate sentiment. Our world is what we make it," Marcus countered. "And today yours ends." Gene sighed, as if disappointed by a student's poor performance. "I had hoped for a more dignified resolution between us. Professional respect, if nothing else." He gestured subtly to his security team. "Kill him." The security team opened fire simultaneously. Marcus was already moving, diving behind a ventilation shaft as bullets shredded the air where he had stood. The confined space worked against Jin's men, limiting their angles, forcing them to bunch together to maintain sight lines. Marcus returned fire from cover, his shots precise despite his injury. 1 guard down, a second wounded. Gene had already retreated back toward the stairwell, his remaining security forming a protective barrier. "You can't win this, Castiano," Gene called from safety. "Even if you somehow reach me, the building is surrounded. Federal teams loyal to me control all exits. Your wife, your father, they die tonight, along with your dreams of legitimacy." Marcus didn't waste breath responding. Words were Jin's weapon, not his. He advanced methodically, using the corridor's infrastructure for cover, eliminating threats with the efficiency that had built his reputation long before he met Sarah. On the rooftop, Sarah had secured the helicopter, disabling the ignition systems and neutralizing the pilots. She could hear the gunfire from inside the access structure, Marcus engaging Jin's security team. Every instinct urged her to rush to his side, but discipline kept her focused on the broader tactical situation. "Leo," she called, moving back toward where he and Antonio had established position. "Status on federal forces? Perimeter established around the compound. They're moving in systematically, floor by floor. But something's not right. They're encountering resistance from other federal units." Sarah understood immediately. The evidence release. Some agents are legitimate, responding to the corruption evidence. Others are Jin's people, trying to contain the situation. A new transmission broke through on her intercepted security frequency. "All units, priority target identified on the roof. Female, armed and extremely dangerous. Neutralize immediately. Repeat, priority target on the roof." Sarah looked up to see the roof access door burst open. Not the one Marcus had entered, but a secondary entrance on the far side. Tactical teams poured through, at least 12 operators moving with military precision. "Get down!" she shouted to Leo and Antonio, already moving to draw fire away from their position. The tactical team spotted her, adjusting their formation to pursue. Sarah recognized their equipment, their movement patterns. These weren't regular security. These were specialized operators. Jin's elite reserves, saved for the most critical situations. She fired on the move, forcing them into cover, creating space to implement her strategy. Her mind calculated angles, distances, tactical options. 12 new threats, limited ammunition, exposed position. Challenging but not impossible. Sarah reached a mechanical housing structure that provided temporary cover. As the tactical team advanced, she timed her counterattack perfectly, emerging at precisely the moment their formation was most vulnerable. 3 went down in her first engagement, clean shots that found gaps in their body armor. The others returned fire, forcing her back into cover as bullets impacted the metal housing around her. "She's pinned," she heard one of them report. "Moving to flank." Sarah smiled grimly. Exactly what she'd anticipated. She'd already prepared her response, placing herself at a junction of rooftop structures that gave her multiple retreat options while channeling their approach. As the team split to encircle her position, she moved, not retreating as they expected, but advancing directly into their weakened center. The boldness of the maneuver caught them off guard, creating crucial seconds of confusion that she exploited without mercy. 2 more down before they could adjust. A third fell to her combat knife when her ammunition temporarily depleted. Sarah reloaded in fluid motion, ducking behind an air conditioning unit as the remaining operators regrouped. "What is she?" one of them gasped over the comm, fear evident in his voice. "Focus," came the sharp response. "She's outnumbered. Keep pressure on her position." Sarah checked her inventory. 5 rounds in her primary weapon. Last magazine in reserve. Backup weapon with a full clip. Knife. Increasingly limited options against what seemed to be an endless supply of opponents. Inside the building, Marcus had fought his way through Jin's security, sustaining another minor wound to his left arm but eliminating all immediate threats. Jin had retreated further, down the stairwell toward what Marcus knew must be his final fallback position, the command center itself. Marcus followed cautiously, aware he was being drawn into Jin's territory. The stairwell opened onto a short corridor with the command center at its end, a reinforced door with biometric security measures protecting Jin's inner sanctum. As he approached, Marcus heard footsteps behind him, multiple sets, moving quickly up the stairs he'd just descended. Reinforcements for Jin, cutting off his retreat. He was now caught between Jin's final defenses and approaching tactical teams. The command center door opened suddenly. Jin stood there, a pistol in his hand, elegant, precise, like everything about the man. "A difficult decision, isn't it?" Jin said, gesturing with his free hand toward the approaching footsteps. "Continue toward me, knowing my security awaits inside, or turn back to face the team approaching from behind?" Either way, your position is untenable. Marcus assessed his options with the clarity that had kept him alive through countless threats. Jean was right, his position was strategically unsound. But strategy wasn't everything. Sometimes survival depended on being unpredictable. He charged directly at Jean. The move was so unexpected that Jean fired hastily, the bullet grazing Marcus's already wounded shoulder. Before he could fire again, Marcus had reached him, driving him backward into the command center with pure physical force. They crashed through the doorway together, Jean losing his grip on the pistol as they impacted a control console. Marcus had a brief impression of the room, wall-mounted screens showing security feeds from throughout the compound, communications equipment, and 3 additional security personnel who were already moving to intervene. Jean recovered quickly, striking with unexpected skill martial arts training that his refined appearance had concealed. Marcus blocked the first attack but took the second in his injured shoulder, pain flaring white-hot through his body. "You see, Marcus," Jean said, circling as his security personnel surrounded them. "This is why sentiment is weakness. Your injuries slow you. Your concern for your wife, your father, it divides your focus. I have no such limitations." Marcus straightened, controlling his breathing through the pain. "That's where you're wrong, Jean. What you see as weakness is my strength. Always has been." On the roof, Sarah had eliminated 3 more of the tactical team, but the remainder had adapted to her tactics, maintaining distance while coordinating their approach. She was running out of options, ammunition, and time. A new sound cut through the gunfire, the staccato beat of helicopter rotors. Not Jin's grounded transport, but a new arrival approaching rapidly from the east. Sarah risked a glance skyward to see a sleek black helicopter appearing over the compound's perimeter. For a moment, she feared Jean had secured additional extraction. Then she saw the figure leaning from the open door, Vincent Castiano, Marcus's brother, a rifle in his hands providing covering fire as the helicopter approached. "Sarah," Vincent's voice came through her earpiece. "Position for extraction." The tactical team, momentarily distracted by the helicopter's arrival, refocused on Sarah with increased urgency. "Stop her. Don't let her reach that helicopter." Sarah broke cover, sprinting toward Leo and Antonio's position as bullets tore across the rooftop around her. Vincent's covering fire kept the tactical team partially suppressed, but they adjusted quickly, some focusing on the helicopter, while others maintained pursuit of Sarah. She reached Leo and Antonio, the elder Castiano now fully alert and moving with surprising agility for someone who'd been heavily sedated hours earlier. "The helicopter can't land with that gunfire," Sarah assessed quickly. "We need to clear a zone." Leo nodded, understanding immediately. "I'll draw their fire east. You get Antonio to the west extraction point." "Leo," Antonio began to object. "No arguments, sir." Leo cut him off with the respectful firmness of a longtime lieutenant. "The family needs you alive." Before they could respond, Leo was moving, drawing fire as he created a deliberate distraction. The tactical team split again, some pursuing Leo, others still focused on Sarah and Antonio. Sarah guided the elder Castiano toward the western edge of the roof where Vincent's helicopter was attempting to position for extraction. 3 of the tactical team moved to intercept them, firing on the move. Sarah pushed Antonio behind a ventilation housing, then engaged the approaching threats directly. Her primary weapon emptied, forcing her to transition to her backup. 1 operator down, the second wounded but still advancing, the third flanking their position with dangerous competence. She heard Leo cry out in the distance, hit, but still fighting. Vincent's helicopter hovered precariously at the roof edge, taking fire but maintaining position through the pilot's remarkable skill. "Go!" Sarah shouted to Antonio, indicating the helicopter now just 15 feet from their position. "I'll cover you." Antonio moved with surprising speed for his age and condition, crossing the exposed space toward the helicopter as Sarah provided covering fire. The remaining tactical operators concentrated their efforts on stopping him, recognizing the high-value target. Sarah intercepted them, her final magazine depleting as she eliminated the immediate threats to Antonio's extraction. Vincent reached from the helicopter, helping his father aboard as the aircraft took fire from the remaining operators across the roof. "Sarah, come on!" Vincent shouted over the rotor noise. She shook her head, pointing toward the roof access where Marcus had disappeared. Get them clear. I'm going after Marcus. Vincent understood both the tactical decision and the emotional one behind it. He nodded once, then signaled the pilot to depart as soon as Antonio was secured. The helicopter banked away from the roof, taking defensive maneuvers as it retreated with its precious cargo. Sarah turned toward the roof access, eliminating one final operator who attempted to block her path. Her count now stood at 32 confirmed neutralizations since the night began. Impressive, but far from complete. Inside the command center, Marcus was in a precarious position. Jin's security personnel had him surrounded, while Jin himself watched from behind the protection they provided. Your father has been extracted, Jin observed, watching the security feeds with clinical detachment. Unfortunate, but not critical to my plans. Vincent's intervention was unexpected. I thought we understood each other better. Family loyalty, Marcus replied, maintaining his defensive posture as the security team closed in. Something you've never understood. Jin sighed, still clinging to outdated concepts. The evidence release was a desperate move, Marcus. Yes, it exposes certain operations, certain relationships. But you've merely accelerated the inevitable chaos while ensuring your own destruction in the process. A commotion at the command center door drew everyone's attention. The reinforcements Marcus had heard earlier had arrived. But something was wrong. Instead of entering smoothly, they appeared to be fighting among themselves. The door burst open to reveal federal agents engaged in combat with each other. Some wearing standard tactical gear, others in specialized equipment Marcus recognized as belonging to Jin's corrupted units. Sir, one of Jin's security team reported urgently, Federal Command is compromised. Director Coleman has ordered all agents to stand down and place you under arrest. Our teams are resisting, but we're losing control of the compound. Jin's composed exterior finally cracked, fury bleeding through his carefully maintained facade. Coleman betrayed me? After everything I provided? The evidence was too comprehensive to ignore, Marcus said, understanding dawning. Too public. Your federal allies are cutting ties to save themselves. Jin's security team looked to him for direction, their confidence visibly wavering as gunfire echoed through the building around them. The organized extraction was collapsing into chaos. Sir, we need to move now, one urged. Secondary extraction point is still viable. Jin collected himself with visible effort. Finish Castiano. Then we proceed to extraction point C. As the security team moved to comply, the command center's secondary entrance exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris emerged Sarah, weapon raised, eyes cold with professional detachment. Step away from my husband, she ordered, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Jin's security hesitated, caught between her sudden appearance and their orders. In that moment of indecision, Marcus struck, leveraging their distraction to disarm the nearest guard and create the opening Sarah needed. What followed was a demonstration of why Sarah had earned her reputation as the most formidable bodyguard in the business. Despite depleted ammunition, despite fatigue and injuries, she moved through the room with lethal grace. 2 guards eliminated before they could properly respond. A third disabled by Marcus's coordinated attack. Jin retreated behind his remaining security, reaching for an emergency protocol panel on the wall behind him. Enough of this, he snarled, all pretense of refinement abandoned. Sarah recognized the danger immediately. Marcus down. She tackled him as Jin activated the protocol, dropping them both behind a reinforced console just as automated defense systems deployed from concealed positions in the ceiling. Gunfire strafed the room, indiscriminate in its targets, hitting Jin's own security personnel along with the surfaces protecting Marcus and Sarah. The automated system lasted 30 seconds, an eternity under such concentrated fire. When it finally ceased, the command center was devastated. Equipment destroyed, bodies scattered across the floor, smoke filling the air from electrical fires ignited by damaged systems. Sarah raised her head cautiously, assessing the aftermath. Jin's security team had been completely eliminated by his own defense system. Jin himself was no longer visible behind the command station where he'd taken cover. Jin's making a run for it, Marcus realized, already moving despite his injuries. There must be another exit. They found it behind the main command console, a small elevator, designed for emergency evacuation. Its doors were closing as they reached it, Jin visible inside, blood streaming from a wound on his temple where debris had struck him. Sarah wedged her combat knife between the doors, preventing them from sealing completely. Marcus forced them open through sheer determination, ignoring the pain that tore through his wounded shoulder. Jin backed against the elevator's far wall, his composure shattered, reaching desperately for a concealed weapon. Sarah disarmed him with practiced efficiency, pinning him against the wall as Marcus entered the small space. "It's over, Jin," Marcus said simply. Jin's laugh held an edge of madness. "Nothing is over. You've won a battle, perhaps, but the war? The 5 families are exposed. Federal investigations will continue. Your dream of legitimacy dies tonight along with the old structures." "Perhaps," Marcus acknowledged, "but whatever comes next, you won't be part of it." Before Jin could respond, the compound's main power failed, emergency lighting bathing the elevator in red illumination. The sounds of systematic clearing operations echoed through the building, federal teams securing the facility floor by floor. "Standard or corrupted?" Sarah asked, listening to the tactical communications through her earpiece. "Standard," Marcus confirmed after checking his own intelligence feeds. "Coleman's people, not Jin's. The legitimate federal response." Jin's expression shifted from defiance to calculation. "You realize what this means? They're clearing the entire compound. Anyone found inside will be arrested. Your wife, your lieutenants, everyone." "Not everyone," Marcus replied calmly. "Only those without exit strategies." Sarah smiled slightly. "You didn't think we came here without an extraction plan, did you?" The elevator had stopped moving without power, trapped between floors. Sarah pried open the ceiling access panel, checking the shaft above. "Clear to the next level," she reported. "We can climb out, reach the secondary evacuation route." "And him?" Marcus nodded toward Jin, now securely restrained. Sarah considered the fallen leader dispassionately. "The federal teams will find him. With the evidence Vincent released plus whatever they discover in the command center systems, his cooperation with corrupt agents will be exposed. He'll spend his life in maximum security, watching everything he built crumble. A fitting end," Marcus decided, "for someone who betrayed the code." They left Jin secured in the elevator, climbing out through the access panel into the shaft beyond. Sarah led the way, navigating with the confidence of someone who had memorized every possible escape route long before they were needed. The secondary evacuation route led them through maintenance areas largely ignored by the federal teams focusing on the compound's main sections. They encountered 2 more of Jin's security personnel attempting the same escape, neutralizing them efficiently before proceeding. "That brings my count to 47, Sarah noted as they reached an exterior access point that would lead them beyond the federal perimeter. 47, Marcus questioned. "Confirmed neutralizations tonight, from the forest to this point." Marcus smiled despite their dire circumstances. "You've been keeping count?" "Professional habit," she replied, checking the exterior area for threats before proceeding. "Though I'm still short of 50. As if the universe had heard her, 3 more of Jin's security personnel appeared at the end of the corridor they were traversing, the last desperate remnants of his organization attempting to flee the compound. They spotted Marcus and Sarah simultaneously, raising weapons in what would prove to be their final mistake. Sarah moved with the fluid grace that had kept Marcus alive through countless threats, eliminating all 3 before they could properly coordinate their attack. 50, Marcus observed as they stepped over the bodies to continue their escape. "Actually 52, Sarah corrected with professional precision. "But who's counting?" They emerged from the compound into the pre-dawn darkness, sirens and flashing lights visible throughout the property as federal operations continued. In the distance, they could see roadblocks, helicopters circling. The full might of federal law enforcement descended upon Jin's once impregnable fortress. "Extraction point?" Marcus asked, checking his injuries now that they had a moment's respite. "Half-mile east," Sarah replied, already moving in that direction. "Jessica arranged it," The contingency we hoped we wouldn't need. They traveled through wooded areas that bordered the compound's manicured grounds, avoiding roads and open spaces where federal teams might spot them. Despite his injuries, Marcus maintained pace, the determination that had first attracted Sarah evident in every step. The extraction point was a small clearing just beyond the property's eastern boundary, unmarked, unassuming, and currently occupied by a waiting helicopter with Jessica herself at the controls. "Took you long enough," she called as they approached, relief evident beneath her attempt at casualness. "Had to make sure the count reached 50, Marcus replied, helping Sarah aboard despite his own injuries. Jessica lifted off smoothly, banking away from the compound as first light began to touch the horizon. Below them, federal operations continued the systematic dismantling of Jin's empire, and perhaps the beginning of a fundamental restructuring of the Five Families world. "Vincent and your father?" Sarah asked as they gained altitude. "Secure at the contingency location," Jessica confirmed. "Leo made it out too, though he'll need medical attention for his injuries." Marcus nodded, processing this information with visible relief. "And the evidence release? Complete. Every family head, every major news organization, federal oversight committees, everyone received it simultaneously. Jin's operations are exposed, along with his corrupted federal connections. The Five Families are reeling, but the immediate threat of coordinated federal action has been neutralized by the exposure of corrupt agents. And the fallout?" Sarah asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear it confirmed. Jessica's expression sobered. "Massive. The Five Families' traditional structure is compromised. Everyone's scrambling to contain damage, establish new protocols, determine who can be trusted. It's the end of an era. And the beginning of another," Marcus said quietly, his hand finding Sarah's despite the pain of his injuries. "The transition we've been working toward for years has just been accelerated." Sarah understood immediately. Marcus had been gradually moving Castiano operations toward legitimacy, a process that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. Jin's betrayal and subsequent exposure had created a chaotic opportunity to accomplish in months what might otherwise have required years. "Your father may not approve," she cautioned, knowing Antonio Castiano's traditional viewpoint. "He'll adapt," Marcus replied with conviction. "He's survived this long by recognizing when change is inevitable." As the helicopter carried them away from the compound, now small in the distance, Sarah finally allowed herself to feel the accumulated fatigue and injuries of the night's battles. 52 confirmed neutralizations. Countless wounds, both received and delivered. A crime boss's empire dismantled. The Five Families' world forever altered. All because of a wrong number 4 years ago. A desperate text from a woman on a bad date that had connected her to the man now beside her. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, noting her expression. "That I was supposed to be your bodyguard," she replied, a small smile touching her lips despite everything. "Not the other way around." Marcus lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her bloodied knuckles. "We protect each other. That's what makes us unbeatable." As dawn broke fully across the horizon, illuminating the city where their story had begun 4 years earlier, Sarah rested her head against her husband's shoulder. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a restructured organization, federal scrutiny, the complex politics of the remaining families. But tonight they had survived, together as they always had. 52, she murmured, already planning how they would rebuild from the night's chaos. Not bad for an anniversary celebration. Marcus's soft laughter joined with hers as the helicopter carried them toward whatever future they would build together. The bodyguard and the boss, partners in all things, bound by something stronger than blood or business. The most dangerous couple in the city heading home.